Generally, I try to start off with the lighter story first, or kind of the more whimsical story first. But today, because the story we're going to cover is so disturbing, I'm going to go ahead and go in with the lead, the big story of the day, and that is the school shooting one. One of the conspiracies on the conspiracy list that we've been investigating this podcast was something called the 2006 Volleyball Incident. It's one of the ones that gets a lot of requests because it's just such a bizarre combination of words. What is the 2006 Volleyball Incident? So, of course, that was something that I got requested a lot. It was something I was personally curious about. What is the 2006 Volleyball Incident? What I came across, obviously links below. The theory is that there was a shooting at a volleyball game back in 2006, and 14 people were killed in South Dakota or Nebraska, and then everything was covered up by the media, and people's minds were erased by MK Ultra, or it was a psyop that they were testing before Sandy Hook. They wanted to see if they could get people to believe something that never happened, and once they realized the test was complete, they wiped everyone's minds. Or it's the Mandela effect, that it actually happened and we don't remember it because we shifted into another universe. All of those are fake. None of those happened. 2006 Volleyball Incident is just it's word soup. If some words were put together to make people curious about the phrase, there's absolutely no proof that there was a volleyball shooting in 2006. However, so we're going to debunk that, unless, of course, more information comes forward. But out of all the research I did, so of course, like I said, I always approach these conspiracies as if they're real. So I began looking for an incident in 2006 involving a shooting. I came across a school shooting that I had never heard of that should be one of the ones that is constantly talked about when we talk about this era. Not only does it have elements of school shootings, all this horrible stuff that comes to school shootings, it has children being killed, it has a lone gunman, it has someone coming into school with multiple guns. It also has elements of sexual assault and Me Too, the Me Too movement. So I'm surprised we don't know about it. I'm sure there are listeners who know about it, and I may have heard about it at the time, but the fact that it's disappeared into the consciousness of America is quite odd because it's actually very, very horrifying. It's a very horrifying event. So what happened was back in 2006, that's how I found out about this. There's a high school called Platte Canyon High School. Now, there was a man who they saw driving around the parking lot. It's just, typical normal September morning. A couple students saw a man parking, looking at the school. They didn't really think anything of it. They thought it was a little suspicious, but not enough to warrant any sort of attention. And they'd see the car drive away, and then, a while later, another group of students would see someone sitting in their car looking at the school. Eventually, this man, Duane Roger Morrison, you know why they put middle names into serial killers? It's so there's not confusion with people. So, because I'm sure there's a lot of Duane Morrisons, but there's not many Duane Roger Morrisons. That's why generally serial killers will have their middle name. Not all the time. I don't know Jeffrey Dahmer's middle name or Ted Bundy. Some of them are just so tapped into the consciousness that it's when it's reported, it's like that. But if you notice, most serial killers and school shootings, stuff like this, infamous people, I should say, they put the middle name in there to kind of, so everyone doesn't get lumped in. Not everyone has to change their name. So at 11:40 in the morning, Duane walks into the high school, walks into a classroom, apparently at random. Teacher asks, "What are you doing here?" He fires a shot in the air, tells the teacher to leave, tells all the boys to leave, and separates the groups of girls. Picks out 7 of them, tells everyone else to leave. The cops, of course, there's a lockdown at the school, everyone's supposed to stay in their classes. This guy's like in his 50s, he's not a student. He's in this classroom, all the school's locked down, the police show up, the police are trying to negotiate with him, and I'll get into the weird conspiracy stuff at the end here, because there's some really weird, complicated stuff going on here. Anyway, so he's in this room with 7 students, 7 female students, lines them up on the wall, begins walking up to each one, they're lined up, puts a gun to their head, pulls them to the middle of the classroom, sexually assaults them, walks them back to the wall, grabs the other one. Does that 7 times. Imagine being in that line. And they're facing the wall. They don't know what's going on. But the one girl said she could figure that out because, You could hear clothes being taken off. And then, of course, eventually it became her turn. Horrific. The waiting of that. The actual event, obviously, but the terror also comes from waiting for that. And there's an interesting thing there as well. He says he has a bomb in his backpack. He has 3 things of C4. The police are being held out. The police are outside. They don't rush the place because he has hostages. This isn't an active shooter event. And what happens is, this started at like 10 in the morning, so now we're close to about 12:35. So this is not an instant thing. This is an ongoing negotiation. The cops are talking to him, trying to get him out of the room. He begins releasing hostages because he's communicating with the police. The hostages come out and say, yeah, he's sexually assaulting us in there. So at that point, the sheriff's like, okay, we have to get him out of there. We have to storm it. So the police make the decision to rush the building, rush the room. They get in the room. He's hiding behind 2 of the girls like a coward. Like a piece of shit. I really that makes me mad. He's hiding behind the 2 girls. The police are getting ready to shoot him. He opens fire on the SWAT team. One of the girls, Emily was her name, so you know where this is going. There's gunfire coming right over her. She runs. He then takes the time to take away from aiming at the police to shoot the girl. And then puts the gun to the head and kills himself. Like a coward. So the young girl was life flighted out, and eventually she didn't make it. She passed away. Now, that's horrifying. That's absolutely horrifying. And, that's that story. And again, I'm surprised. That story is something that I'm surprised is if my goal in life was gun control or ending the patriarchy or anything like that, this would be something I'd be talking about all the time. How is this lost in consciousness? And you could say, well, we've just had so many school shootings. We've had so many school shootings. But, this is particularly horrifying. What's interesting about this story, though, what makes it different than just this true crime event that happened that people have forgotten about, is the conspiracy angles to it. There's a lot of stuff we don't know about this. We don't know why he did it. The police have never said what he was asking for in the negotiations. The police have not revealed that. The police have revealed that he wanted to leave, but even in the reports, the police will say we don't want to talk about the whole length of the call, and that might be standard procedure. But still, I think it's weird because it would play into his motivation. We don't know why he picked that classroom, and that's fine. It was probably just a random thing. There's been allegations that he was like a porn addict, and that's what led him to this. When they got his backpack, it didn't have any bombs in it. It was full of duct tape, a knife, and sex toys. So he came prepared to do this. But why? We don't know. I searched before I recorded this, I wanted to really give it a good college try to find out why he did this, figuring out if there was something about this. I found out he wrote a letter. I had to find that letter. I absolutely had to find that letter. And after a bit of research, I found it. No mention of girls, no mention of schools. What seems to have precipitated this was he bought a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, and he feels he got ripped off because he bought all these aftermarket parts, and they were subpar. And in this letter, there's 2 elements to the letter. One is, he's really mad at the Harley-Davidson people, and he was calling them up and arguing with them to the point where they actually called the police on him. And the letter makes it look like he's going to go shoot up the Harley-Davidson place because he's like, hey guys, he wrote it to his family members, and he goes, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I probably will never see you again, and the Harley-Davidson people ripped me off. That's the second part of the letter. The first part of the letter is he goes to say, I know you guys are my family, but I want to let you know my father abused me. He abused me my entire life. I never had a childhood. It was absolutely terrible. And what a key point of that letter was the waiting was the worst part. The physical and the emotional abuse was terrible, but knowing he was looking for me. Knowing, because he would hide in these places in the house. He would try to avoid his father. He'd go to school. That was his only safe place. He says, for 6 hours a day, I was completely safe. But I knew when I got home, my father was going to abuse me. He doesn't really go into what the abuse is, but he says the waiting is the worst part. Knowing that he's looking for me is the worst part. And how does he spend his last 2 hours on the planet Earth? Making people feel that fear. It probably made him feel extremely powerful. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a cyclo for that matter. Battlefield Earth I was watching clips of that last night for whatever reason. But yeah, his last moments on Earth was sharing that fear and that terror with just girls. And in the only place he ever felt safe, he turned into a place of hate and anger and fear. Getting back at the world. For what? I mean, he had his own pain, and I feel sorry that anyone has to go through that. But the key is not to share your pain. Crazy. So, yeah, I would be curious to hear what those conversations were with the police, what was actually going on. Really, the girls in the room would remember, but I hope they've forgotten about this event as well. It's doubtful, but I hope everyone's kind of moved on with their own life and kept going on. But that's that school shooting. I came across that while I was researching the made-up 2006 volleyball incident. Instead, found 2006 Platte Canyon shooting, which to me is more horrifying than one girl getting killed. This story is more horrifying than 14 people getting killed and the government erasing everyone's memory and shifting us into another reality. Because one deals with actual human evil, and the other one deals with fantasy elements. That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys. Okay, so that was a rough one. I thought it was rough, at least. I don't like hearing about stuff like that, but I think it's important to kind of talk about and go into. It was fascinating. The way his mind was working. So let's get to a fun story. Because I came across this morning, actually. And I just thought it was adorable and funny. And I can kind of see how their heart was in the right place, honestly. I don't think it's as bad as people think it is. So, in Cairo, there's a zoo that has these two zebras. And they're, hanging out in the little zebra enclosure. And kids are like, look, Mommy, a zebra. Look at it's a zebra. And the mom's like, yeah, it's a zebra, honey. Well, one guy was looking at him, and he's like, that's not a zebra. And he's kind of looking at it, and he gets his camera out, and he's like, hey, man, take a picture of me. Take a picture of me next to this quote-unquote zebra. The picture's online. I'll post the links, but this is not a zebra. It is a donkey, a white donkey. I'm assuming it was white, with black paint striped on it, or black ink, and the ink is all smudged, so it's obviously not a zebra. And so, of course, people are like, hey, what's going on? Why do you have this fake zebra? Now, I don't have a quote from this zoo, but there was a zoo in Gaza that also had painted donkeys to look like zebras, and they said, well, we couldn't get zebras because of the Israeli blockade. Couldn't get zebras in. And this was the quote. The first time we used paint, but it didn't look good. So apparently, they used some sort of ink. And then the quote goes on to say, the children don't know, so they call them zebras, and they are happy to see something new. Aww. See, little kids don't care. I guess if you're an adult And you're like, oh, that's not a zebra. But, it's like a Santa Claus thing. Like, little kids just want to see a zebra. And I mean, that's adorable. If you pay to go to the zoo and you see a donkey and it's painted as a zebra, I mean, are you really ripped off? Because all the other animals, you get to see the lion, and you get to see, oh wait, the lion is fake too? So in China, I'll give the people in Gaza, they can't get zebras in because there's a blockade. They paint a donkey fine. In Cairo, it's a little less forgivable. In China, okay, so here's the thing. You have a donkey painted with black stripes, it's a zebra. In China, people went to go see the lion. They went, they're going to go see a lion here. It was a dog. It was a big, hairy dog. Just hanging out. Walking around, it looks nothing like a lion. Donkey, zebra, I can kind of see it. The height's a little bit different. Probably would have been better off getting a horse and painting it, but that's probably harder. This is clearly a dog. It is a Tibetan Mastiff. It's a large, hairy dog. So they were saying that they had put it in the lion cage as a safety issue, but they don't really say if it's like, was the dog not being safe? Or was there a lion roaming around or whatever? Then they found a dog in a cage labeled wolf. Okay, I can kind of see that. Then, in the leopard cage, there was a white fox. So basically, that's not a zoo. That was all in one zoo. So you go to see the lion, it's a dog. You go to see a wolf, it's a dog. You go to see a leopard, and it's a fox. Now, the Chinese park are like, oh, no. We just have to kind of move stuff around. We're not short on funds, but, we're trying to breed a dog and a wolf for whatever reason. And we're kind of moving stuff around. This was just a bad day for everyone to show up. I did think it was funny. They had a quote here. I can't say the person's name, not because it's rude, but because I can't pronounce it. And it's also like a Twitter handle or something like that. But this quote I thought was funny. If this works, why would people even bother to go to the zoo? Children will cry out, look, a lion came out at the sight of a Tibetan Mastiff. Or look, it's a rat seeing snakes on the street. This is totally absurd. The rat and the snake, I mean, if you're trying to pass off a fox as a leopard, maybe, yeah. And I can see that from a learning perspective. If some kid sees a Tibetan Mastiff walking down the street, they're like, oh my God, there's a lion. Everyone run. I get that. Donkey, zebra, I'm cool with. Dog, lion, no. Fox, leopard, that's a ripoff. That is a ripoff. And then someone else says, why doesn't the zoo simply put the zookeeper in a cage with the sign gorilla on its gate? Why not? We're actually going to be covering the history of human zoos coming up. And I thought about saving this story for that, but after the volleyball story, I just needed to have something a little more lighthearted. And I think just the fact that little kids are having a good time while their adults like shake their fist at the nearby zookeeper and he just like shrugs his shoulder and be like, it's a job, as he's eating a banana and he's like climbing in the cage. I wanted to kind of contrast it with something a little bit lighter. Well, I hope you guys had a great time listening to today's episode. I had a great time having you here. I always like having people listen. I love getting the feedback. I get a lot of feedback on the YouTube channel. That's Dead Rabbit Radio. You can search us out on YouTube there. Get a lot of feedback on there. It's great. I'm always looking at the downloads, always looking at the views on YouTube. It's just growing every single day, so I really appreciate that. You guys who keep tuning in. Let your friends know. Let your friends know that you're having fun with this podcast. Let's get more people listening to this because I really like producing it. I'm not going to stop anytime soon. This is episode, I think, 36, 37 maybe. So, yeah, it's going great. I'm having a lot of fun. I love finding these weird, creepy, bizarre stories and bringing them to you, and I hope you have a great time listening to them. I am Jason Carpenter. This is Dead Rabbit Radio, a daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great one.